Well, I think we could say safely that the book project started about 4 years ago, and we met in 1999, and I think we'd had that conversation numerous times about the need to have an edited book. And 4 years ago, it was clear that the issue of feminicides in Guatemala was really coming into the fold of recognition and awareness within our own work in Chihuahua and Ciudad Juarez. And I think it was a good move to be able to incorporate what feminicide meant, how it was used within the global South, and it has a contribution. I think it's making a contribution right now within debates and dialogue and discussion, and hopefully it'll move from the academic realm into perhaps a legal perspective and a legal framework.
Yeah, one of the things that we also realized and came to realize was that there are many of the places where there were instances of feminicide. It was a kind of large scale, widespread violence against women that was situated in a gender framework. Is that they had certain things in common in many of these places, and one of them was a kind of system of impunity around the murders and disappearances of women, around crimes against women, and that many of the countries, like we're thinking about Guatemala, Argentina, even Mexico, also shared histories of state violence and armed conflict. But at the same time, there were like different manifestations in different reasons that made it specific to the region. And so we thought that a project that could bring all of these various studies that were women researchers, feminist researchers, but also that advocates on behalf of women's rights, that all the different documentations of this violence, that we would bring them together in a book and create a kind of conversation so we could see, well, what are the shared commonalities, what are the specificities, and how do we address this problem? Because it's not just happening, I mean, we're thinking about the book is about Latin America, but it's not just happening in Latin America. It's happening in the Congo, it's happening in Rwanda, it happened during the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And so this is a kind of a global phenomenon that we really need to address, that women's violence is no longer a private issue, that it is also a public issue that demands the attention of members of society.
I think the book too, the collection in and of itself, offers a new framework to think about how to tackle these sort of issues, and it really does help shed light onto feminicide more broadly. It's not just the spectacular forms of extreme violence against women through feminicide, and people, I think, are using it more broadly to point to how the impact on communities through what we refer to the witness survivors, and then how community members have come together to take bits and pieces of the struggle of the phenomena to work together and collectively. So I think it's really exciting to see that happening.
Yeah, you made a good point, because you're right. We think about violence as physical and personal injury, right? And at the very kind of direct, immediate level. But it's like you say, what are the long-term effects of violence? What is the lingering effect of violence? And in many ways, the book deals with that, the after effects, and which right now you can see it in communities all over Mexico, that they really are having to struggle with the remnants of this incredible, the system of impunity, where they feel that they can't ask the state for justice. They have to rethink new models of of kind of justice making in society.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too the website that we created around the book and trying to raise more awareness, stuff, Terrorizing Women.com, has helped also at another level to engage more people. And I ran into some folks from Guatemala at a conference in Los Angeles that were talking about the book, had heard about it, and were familiar with the work of our colleagues Ana and Gato and Montserrat and everybody. And so it's interesting how people are engaging the topic differently and in a way that's much more, I think, intimate, and crossing those transdisciplinary borders that I think we worked really hard to do, and we accomplished it as well.
Yeah, that's what's kind of one of the things that's unique about this book, is the fact that it is not it doesn't just include social science researchers who are doing work on the topic, but it includes people who persons who are litigators on behalf of women's rights and human rights. It includes legal scholars who are thinking about how can we use these, how can we think about how can we think about what this category means in law, what a category means in terms of like justice as well. The testimonials of many of the, what we call the witness survivors, which are the relatives of many of the disappeared and murdered women. So we're trying to, have it's a project that is very cross-disciplinary, cross-disciplinary in a very broad sense of the term, and not just in terms of like academic disciplines, but across various fields of knowledge. And I think that's one of the unique contributions, that there is not a book like this that is that presents the information in this way.
And I think it'll have far-reaching effects as well. So it's really bringing into the fold the conversations that are taking place at the local level, and really taking it globally to interrogate what's happening to women worldwide, not just, as you said, in Latin American countries.
The violence now that there is in Mexico, and one of the aspects, what's happening is that the feminicide is being kind of marginalized once again, and it took a lot of activism on behalf of women, of women's rights groups, to raise this issue as a social problem. It's been since the 90s, where women have basically been actively involved in trying to raise awareness about the widespread problem of violence towards women, and trying to take it out of the private sphere, out of the sphere of the family, out of the sphere of culture, and really, bringing a much more broader awareness. Making sure that people deprivatizing basically, and making sure that people understand that this is a form of violence that affects all of us.
Right.
It's not just something that is taken care at the level of the family. And I think one of the things that's happening now, once again, with all this emphasis on the drug wars in Mexico, is that this violence again that persists, and that remains under impunity, that this violence again has been marginalized within the media, within the focus of public policy. And so we really need to be sure that we keep this issue on the front burner, not the back burner.
Right. And now more than ever, it's much more violent for women and girls and entire communities. And I think that's something that the book offers models or frameworks of understanding violence and causes of violence and structural violence, but also offers some solutions or remedies to contemplate that can be used more broadly to struggle to fight community violence and this level of social violence that's become so paramount to the identity of places like Ciudad Juarez and Chihuahua. So if people think that the book is just, because of the title, Terrorizing Women, that it solely reflects violence against women and girls, I think what the book offers is something much more broad, that women and girls and children are central to communities, but it's really something that affects every member of any community when you have this sort of overarching structural violence that becomes social or community or gender-related violence. It's something